Reevaluation updates are always funny because they mean absolutely nothing, but they do help serve multiple purposes for sports teams. So, looking at this headline, we have Thunder say Chet Holmgren to be reevaluated in 3 to 5 weeks. Well, all this is saying is that the Thunder will look at Chet Holmgren's injury again in 3 to 5 weeks, which we still don't even have a definitive timeline when they will look at his injury again. But even if they do, they didn't say that they will make an announcement. We don't know if Chet Holmgren is progressing. We don't know if he suffered a setback. We don't know when he's expected to return. We don't have anything. So, but we do have what we do have is an update that the Thunder can point to and say, here's your update on Chet Holmgren, but the update means absolutely nothing. And then the timing is also, there's also some interest in the timing because we have this excerpt from the article that reads, the team diagnosed him with what it said was a right iliac wing fracture and did not provide a timetable for his return at the time, only saying he'd be reevaluated in 8 to 10 weeks. He originally suffered this injury on November 10th. So nearly 10 weeks later, they provide this update, which says absolutely nothing. So if you wanted to read into this, you could actually read negatively into this because he'd be reevaluated in 8 to 10 weeks. 10 weeks later comes, and all they say is that he's going to be reevaluated. So maybe he suffered a setback if we're going to read negatively into this, or maybe he's doing better and in 3 to 5 weeks he'll return. We don't know because the headline means nothing and the article doesn't provide anything additional. So I talked about the purposes this serves for sports teams. Well, it allows teams to have flexibility, right? Because they're not committing to anything, they're not saying anything, so they can play this either way. But we really don't know, and everyone is kept in the dark, including fans who have bought tickets to games, possibly hoping that they'll get to see Chet Holmgren, but they don't know because there is this vague update. But the team does retain ultimate flexibility either way. So they haven't promised anything. They haven't said anything either way. It's nothing. And they don't admit that something is better or worse than until they absolutely have to, right? We frequently see this with NBA teams. They avoid timetables. They want to make it seem like everything is going okay until they absolutely can't do that anymore. And I don't know why it is that NBA teams always have to downplay bad news, why they can't just admit things more freely, but they don't. And the selfish part of this may be just simply they want to sell more tickets or they want to string fans along as long as they possibly can. But of course, we know that sometimes injuries are worse than are being portrayed. But with this tactic, what it does is it enables teams to really not say anything one way or another, but at the same time have a seeming update on an injured player's status. And so you'll typically see this with players who have significant injuries and the teams don't want to let on one way or another. So to me, when I see vague headlines like this, especially ones where we really have an extension of what should have been, there should have been some positive, there should have been something positive to come from 10 weeks of rest. We don't see that. So when I see vague, ambiguous headlines, it makes me read into this more negatively because if there was something positive, typically teams will come out with that. But again, they do retain flexibility. But this is an interesting tactic. And I think this is something that has become more common, especially when we have the I don't know if you'd call them reporters, but the people like Shams Charania and Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, I think is his name, but all these different people that are providing updates as soon as they come. And so sometimes to fulfill this need for an update, these types of articles and press releases will be put out by the teams, and then the reporters will call them, run with them and provide them, and then seemingly there's an update. And I think many people read this and they think that 3 to 5 weeks is Chet Holmgren's timeline or timetable to return. It's actually not. It's just the timetable that he will be looked at again. So this is one of those things that's slightly deceptive because people read headlines really quickly, and they might see 3 to 5 weeks and think that's about when Chet Holmgren will return. That's not saying that at all. This headline's not saying that at all. All it's saying is that he'll be looked at again in 3 to 5 weeks. So somewhat deceptive, somewhat sneaky, but this is common practice now, and it means absolutely nothing.